Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for your patience as we're working through a couple of technical details there. I want to welcome Jared Matthews. Our podcast has historically been optimizing the hiring process, brought to you by the Hire Talent. My name is Fletcher Wimbush, and our company is the Hire Talent, and our latest product, Discovered, is a performance hiring platform. And I'm really excited to have Jared here today. We have a unique history together. I think we played football together in I don't know, freshman year of high school or something, right? Or throughout high school. And we came back together about a year ago and talking about hiring, and we've been getting to know Jared and his business. And I was really impressed with what you've been able to do. You have such a unique business, as you were telling me in the kind of the pregame here. You guys are like the ultimate problem solvers. And so we titled this one From Owner to Innovator, and I want to have a conversation with Jared. He's going to be kind of our inaugural part of our construction and contracting series that we're going to be putting on here. So yeah, welcome, Jared. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Fletcher. Appreciate you having me. It's definitely good to reconnect.
Yeah, and you have a much cooler beard than I do. So this is a perfect kickoff to this series that we're going to be putting on. But tell us a little bit about your business and what you do exactly, because I needed a little bit of clarity on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're a family-owned business. We've been around for 32 years now. Back in '91, my dad started us out of the garage, and we've just grown organically from there. As you mentioned, we're the kind of quintessential problem solver, right? So we've always kind of been that company that when somebody else couldn't figure it out, they came to us and we found a solution and figured out a way to get through it. So that's how we started for probably the first 20 years or so, and it got us up to a point where we had about 20 employees, and we were doing pretty well and able to weather a couple of the storms that came through. The 2008 and 2000 dot-com bust and the 2008 stuff that everybody else saw, and right shortly after that is when we kind of started turning a corner a little bit and seeing a lot of growth coming out of all those slow periods. So we focused ourselves a little bit, and so kind of our dot-com bust and 2008 stuff that everybody, our niche comes into fall protection, custom metal fabrication, automated and semi-automated. Focused ourselves a little bit, and then we also do conveyor and other industrial equipment maintenance and installation. So currently we're sitting right around 60 employees, and we've got 4 locations: one here in Newark, California, Portland, Oregon, Washington to service the Seattle area, and then Denver, Colorado. We opened up end of last year. So yeah,
you're tied to like all the biggest tech hubs in the western part of the United States, basically.
Not on accident.
Not on accident. Yeah, go figure.
Yep.
And so I love that. I mean, and you mentioned roller coasters, right? I mean, so nothing it will stop you guys. You're going to figure out the hardest, most complex, problems, and figure out how to get that equipment installed, or that, safety apparatus set up, or get that roller coaster to go.
Yeah, totally. That one was an interesting one. The roller coaster was one. We've done a bunch of repairs for the local amusement park here, like just weld repairs and kind of small stuff. And then one day they came to us and said, "Hey, we're putting in a new coaster. You guys in?" All right, let's do it. So it was a cool project.
Does that mean you were the first to ride the roller coaster?
Oh, no way. That's way past my days, man.
Yeah. Oh man, we must be getting old if you're opting out of roller coaster rides, man.
Right? You can see it in the beard.
Yeah, I took my 3-year-old daughter and on her first roller coaster this weekend, and I was like, I thought she'd be into it, and we got done. I was like, "Do you want to do it again?" And she's like, "No." So, yep. All right, no, that's awesome. Well, what I'm really curious to hear about is this journey. I mean, you mentioned kind of in our pregame notes, 2018, 2019, you're sitting around 20 or 30 employees, and You've doubled in size and been growing at a really solid clip of 15 to 20% year over year. Tell us a little bit about that journey. What clicked? What happened? And what's kind of allowed that to occur for you from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a lot of things. Kind of like what we were talking about before. We kind of adopted a little bit of a strategy, or not a little bit, a lot of a strategy of just getting a little bit better every day, right? And so
Mm,
none of it happens overnight, or at least in my experience, most of the stuff that does happen overnight doesn't stick.
yeah,
So we kind of just had to really recognize that and be patient, and kind of we just kept making little changes and looking for ways to leverage things like technology, like your software platform, right?
yeah,
It does the work of what would probably have taken us 3 or 4 HR people or outsourced, recruiting firms
yeah,
to keep track of all the candidates, especially in all the different branches we have, all the different positions we're trying to fill. Um, we've been able to leverage that with just one HR person to
yeah,
to to kind of do the work of that many people. So it's an example of one thing, but that's what we've kind of looked across the board. We've gone to more software based operations. So 10 years ago, if you'd have came to me and had a job for me, I mean, we were using paperwork.
yeah.
Guys in the
And I
field.
think a lot of contractors still are in that world, right? They're still using sort of old school methods
Yeah,
to do their work, but you're leaning into the technology that can enable your workforce to be more efficient then.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the key. That's been the theme, especially these last few years. I mean, with the advances in AI and all that stuff. I'm by no means a techie at all, but
Yeah,
I'm learning. Like every time I learn a little bit more, it's like, oh, that's cool. Like you can do so much more with so much less, without killing your people either, right? Like
yeah.
you can use the tools to do the stuff that people
How,
don't want to do anyway.
yeah. How do you get them to adopt it? I mean, I even have this in my own business, and I have a bit of a tech business, right?
Sure.
And even with myself, I mean, you and I guess,
Yeah.
similar age, we grew up with technology, but not like the, later millennials and Gen Zs, right?
Yeah.
And I always feel like there's like an adoption period, right? It's not like you don't just like implement technology and tomorrow all of a sudden it works properly. There's kind of a commitment curve that you have to have, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point. I mean, there's no poison or no magic pill that's going to make everybody stop and be like, oh, I want to go through that change, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, just as an example, we changed our like our core operating software 3 times in the last 3 years, actually.
Wow.
And every time I get the moans and groans, right, because it's changed. But the key to it to me was one, involving everybody in the decision, and
Mm,
helping, not just dumping it on them, but letting them have a little bit of a voice and an opinion on if there's a concern, what is it, right? Why do you think this isn't going to work, or why do you think this is going to make your job harder?
yeah.
Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's just a lack of information. That's what I've seen most of the time is they make an assumption on, oh, this is going to make my job harder because right now I know how to do it in the existing
Yeah.
software.
Yeah.
But
Change is hard for all of us, right?
exactly,
No matter what it is in our lives, the moment you change your routine, you're developing a new habit, right?
yep.
And I think about like Atomic Habits. Have you read that
Oh
book?
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
book.
It's like it takes a lot of intentionality to adopt a new set of habits, and technology is a new habit,
For
right?
sure. For sure, yeah, and so I think that information piece is important, right? Is being able to walk through it with them, right, and taking the time to walk through and say, hey, this is going to make actually your job better or easier in the long run because you're going to have all this extra information, or it's going to it's going to automate some of these processes that, yeah, you know how to do them manually right now. You won't have to worry about them later. So
Yeah. Well, I can imagine with your workforce, you got a lot of trades, right? You got welders and shop guys and folks that work with their hands, and technology may not always be their favorite thing. I
yeah.
imagine. How have you dealt with that? That part of your workforce to get them a little more excited or willing to embrace.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I think it comes back to just being able to demonstrate and sharing information that shows, the classic with them, right? What's in it for me, right? And so
Yeah.
back in the day when we first went digital, it was real easy for me to show like, hey, we're going from these paper work orders to a digital work order, which means you don't have to come to the shop every morning and get your assignment for the day. You can go straight to the job site, right? So you save time, save commute. So that was like the first iteration of it. It was like I said, it's still painful in some ways because the shift, but it's pretty easy to demonstrate the advantages for the guys in the field. Uh, Probably the tougher one was shifting from software to software because they're like, wait a minute, I just learned this.
Yeah.
You went through this change and you're just changing it again to give me the same thing. So really digging in and and it's a good exercise for me too, to make sure that we're not just making change for the sake of change, right? We're doing it with an advancement in mind.
Yeah. High intentionality. Yeah. I imagine you learn through these iterations, right? You try something, you learn from that experience, and then you might make a migration. And I would imagine many people who are listening to this can probably share this experience, right? Evolve the tools and the softwares that you're using, and it can be a little bit painful, but hopefully you learn what you like and didn't like, and you're sort of advancing that, I guess, along the way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the part is kind of like what you just mentioned, right? Being intentional about it. And look, if you're making change every other week and it's clear that you're not thinking it through, right? Eventually you're going to look back and nobody's going to be behind you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thought that was pretty interesting from our show notes is, you're demonstrating an awareness of getting buy-in, right? To any change, whether it be a technology change or a process change. And I love what you're saying about get better every day. There's kind of it'll escape me now, but they'll get 1% better every day, right? And that has a compounding effect, like, compounding interest of sorts, right? A lot easier to get 1% better than 20% better, right? But before you know it, you're double. And so kind of taking it back to that, what were some of the other things that you felt like helped get you guys to where you're at today in the last 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, I mean, I would say from kind of the hard, not skill sets, but the hard changes that we've made. The software going digital has been a huge change for us and a huge step in the right direction. And honestly, I don't know how we would have been able to open up these remote branches without it. There's no way that I can have an office in Kent, Washington, and be able to share information as readily as we have with all the technology portion of things.
Yeah.
So that's a big piece. I think also, we've also changed the way, from a people perspective, the way that we do our reviews and our interactions with our people.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. I mean, you talked a lot about communication and owning the people results as a leader in our kind of notes. So tell me about that mind shift change and how that's affected growth for you.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to kind of what I was trying to say there was we historically we used to do kind of the standard review process where we had a lengthy 2 or 3 page questions and the standard what do you think you're great at, what do you think you're bad at, and give yourself a 1 to 10, and it was really just a useless lip service thing. So we switched from annual reviews to semi-annual reviews, and it's all open-ended, right? So it's more conversation. It's, hey, let's check in, especially for our guys in the field. It's difficult to nail them down. I'm like, hey, you doing all right? What do you need to be more successful? And so across the company with our field guys and even with the direct reports that I have, we meet at least every 6 months for the review portion, the formal portion, but also from a manager standpoint, we meet weekly. And again, just to check in, like, hey, what's going on? What's working? What's not working? What am I missing? Do you need more support on? Right?
There you go. Those are the 2 questions, right? So that's like my coach taught me that, and I'm new to that game. He's like, those are the 2 questions. You check in with all your direct reports every week, and you simply ask them those 2 questions: what's working, what's not working, and how can I help you?
Yeah, and sometimes they're boring meetings. Sometimes it's like it's a 5-minute, like, oh, I'm good, I'm busy, I don't want to talk to you right now. Like, oh, cool. And sometimes it's hey, let me tell you about the storm of crap that happened this last week that that you probably need to insert yourself into. And so now I'm able to have better visibility and provide more support.
Yeah. And it's not a taskmaster type of set of questions, right? It's more about them and how they're feeling, right? And
Right.
yeah,
And in some cases, it is a little taskmaster. Like I have a couple of them that they benefit from having somebody to say, "Hey, this is what I'm working on this week. Like, is there something I'm missing, or am I prioritizing these things wrong?" So, a couple of them I do sit and we'll just go through, like, what are you working on this week? And hey, what if you did this first because it looks like it's a smaller task and you can knock, and so we're able
yeah,
to. But it's not a micromanager. It's not like
yeah.
you need to do this. It's more of a, hey,
Well,
how do we help you manage your time and make sure you're efficient?
well, just listening to your language there, that's a very coach oriented way of approaching. Hey, I'm overwhelmed, and
Mhm.
you took an approach of like, well, maybe, have you thought about it this way, or have you considered this other approach, or prioritizing it like that? And then the light bulb moment happens for the other person, but you're not telling them what to do, right?
Right. Right. I'm definitely big on that. I don't know if you've ever heard of a book called Turn the Ship Around. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't. Yeah, check
It's
it out.
actually it's a pretty good book. It's he's a submarine captain. I was a submariner, so it rang a little bit. But
Yeah,
even without that, it's still a great book. But anyway, the kind of the idea behind it is empowering your people to make their own decisions and inform you of their decisions, so that you can interject if needed. But you're creating an autonomous team that doesn't feel the need to come to you for every
yeah.
should order these pencils kind of thing, right?
Give them the kind of the guardrails, but you're also, it's very coaching them through to their
Yeah,
own solution with some guardrails, right? So
yeah,
they've more buy-in, like what you talked about earlier when implementing new tools, is getting people involved and hearing their concerns or wishes, what they'd like to have or what they're worried about. And yeah, so you talked a lot about communication and the importance of that. And what other ways have you felt, outputs or outcomes from that change in leadership style have you felt have occurred from that?
yeah. I think we've seen more of just what you're talking about, more of the ownership piece of things. And we're not all the way there, and I don't know that we'll ever be there. I think it's kind of that, as long as we're always getting better, I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
I don't know that there's ever nobody's ever going to be perfect at it, right? You're
yeah,
never. So I think that push towards that ownership and that kind of, hey, look, if I can get 75% of everybody to think even 75% as much of an owner as I am, like I
yeah.
think we're doing pretty dang good, right?
Have you always thought that way? Because always had a hard time with that. Like, I always have such high expectations of myself and others, and so I feel like coming to that conclusion where if everybody, if people could just own this 75% as much as I feel like I own this,
Yeah,
right? Did you always feel that way, or was there a turning point?
yeah. I mean, I feel like I've always felt that way, but I also feel like that you have to base that in reality, right? Like
Yeah,
nobody is ever going to care for my kids the way that I care for my kids because of
yeah,
my right. Nobody's going to own my business the way that I own my business because it's my business.
yeah,
So that's why I say if I can get you to 75% to where you see in the vision and you're pulling the rope the same direction and you're at least close to as
yeah,
emotionally distraught when something goes really wrong. Man, I think that's huge.
yeah.
Uh,
No,
yeah,
that's great. And I think you've done well with turnover as well from our earlier conversations, I think that is that been
yeah.
an area that has gone well for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly again always room for improvement on that in the hiring process and the
Yeah.
onboarding and kind of the way that we build our culture around here. I think there's always room for improvement. I think there always
Yeah.
will. That being said, I mean, I can attest to the fact that we haven't, our number three employee that we ever hired back in 1994 or whatever still works for us today,
Yeah.
and he's not alone, right? There's
Yeah.
a handful of other guys that have been with us for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
I think as far as that goes, yeah, there's some turnover that's going to happen, and some of that as I would imagine you would agree. Most of that has to do with bad hires, right? And it's
Yeah.
not taking the time from the beginning to really make sure that, hey, that's a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes good person, but they're a bad fit, or, can be issues there. And, obviously, you see in a lot of the, blue collar type environments or high trade environments where there's extraordinarily high turnover. And so if you're shooting in the, 20% range, annually, then you're way above most of the class, right? In this type of a sector, right? And that has a big impact on the quality of work that you can do for your clients and the ability to grow, I imagine.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, and it's right, it's typical or real tempting, especially in construction, that you've got a big job, you need a bunch of bodies, you just mass hire to
Yeah.
without really without really going through the thorough motions of making sure that, again, that they're going to fit. And I think that's something that we've done a lot of, especially in this last year working with you guys, and a little bit before that, but is that vetting and that kind of looking for people that are going to be a good fit and they're going to stick around. I'm not really
Yeah.
not really a fan of that kind of, well, we'll just hire them for a couple months and let them go when this project's over. We want them to stick around
or cross our fingers and just
right.
hope it kind of works out, right?
Right.
When did you have that mind shift, change? I mean, what was kind of the turning point for you there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it was probably within the last, oops, that was within the last year or two. The light bulb kind of went off, and then there was a few speakers, and again talking to a few folks like yourself that kind of sparked that light bulb. We're like, you know what? How much are we really spending on all of these bad hires, right? And these hey, let's fill the spot, and if they work great, and if they don't, we'll move them on and find the next one. There's a lot of time and money that I think most people don't realize you're throwing down the drain, with that things.
Yeah, because it's not just the cost of running an ad and hiring them and onboarding and buying them a uniform. I mean, there's a cost there, obviously, but that's not the bulk of the cost. I mean, what was that epiphany? I mean, where do you see that cost, and how did you sort of internalize that to create the mind shift?
Yeah, so I see that the biggest cost that I see is getting them up to speed, right? And getting them up to where we can trust them to be able to do their work right. A lot of our work, most of our projects it's not 10, 20 guys on a job site. It's maybe 3 or 4 guys on a job site. So when you have 1 or 2 of those 3 or 4 guys that either aren't performing or aren't reliable, aren't showing up, that's a big deal for us, and it really screws up the rest of the process. And so,
so it takes a toll. It takes a toll on your existing people who are good.
Exactly.
An emotional toll and a physical toll, burnout, overtime, and frustration, right, for them. Let alone the fact that maybe you paid this guy to be on the job for 3 months and you got to let him go, and he basically never added any value, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he never really got a chance to get up to speed and kind of be a productive member of the team.
Yeah,
and he's already gone, right? And so there's a huge cost there, and it's hard to put your finger on exactly what that is. But yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah. Well, I always think about the emotional toll, and you're right. And it's not what is that cost, but it is something. And if you lose a good person because of that, because they're overworked, overstressed, or frustrated because they keep turning over their, partner in that 2 or 3 person team, right? You can only imagine what that other guy is going through, right? He's not feeling great about everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, especially in those smaller teams, right? Like who wants to work in a place where you don't know who you're working with tomorrow? Inevitably you want to build some bonds, and you want to know the guy, and know about his kids or whatever hobbies and interests. You have something to talk about. And that's a revolving door like that.
Yeah. You would imagine, a lot of your team members, they build a relationship and a friendship of some sort, right? And that makes coming to work, getting underneath a piece of equipment and welding and, more enjoyable, right?
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, look, the reality is some of what we do, we ask a lot of our guys from time to time. We have 24/7 service. We have, so we have guys that are sometimes answering a service call at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. Well, you don't do that for very long unless you're unless you're bought into what's going on, right? I mean, I can only.
And if they're answering that service call because the guy before them screwed up the job, that not only is that costly for you as an organization, but that again, there's that frustration, emotional toll for the individual, right? That he's like, I got to go clean up Bobby's work, right, or something, right? You know, at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's the last thing I want to be doing, right?
Right.
Whether I'm getting paid for it or not, I don't want to really be doing this.
Right.
Right? You know?
I'm going to tell Bobby you used him as an example, by the way.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe you have a Bobby. I'm sure you have a Bobby on the team, or Joe, or John, or Mike, or something. No. Yeah, no, that's, hey, I'm really glad we touched on that, because I don't know. I feel like I've always shouted in a room about kind of the opportunity, what I call the opportunity costs of getting hiring right or wrong. And those are, have these enormous costs, and they can be, as you said, very difficult to calculate. You can put some numbers around it. But the soft cost, or these hidden costs associated with getting it right or wrong, is an enormous thing that, both, again, has hard and hidden costs there to it. So, it's interesting to see a guy like you kind of come to that conclusion over time. And, I always feel like I'm shouting into empty room. So thank you for bringing it up. But, well, good. Well, we're coming up at the end of our half hour here. I don't know if there's any questions that we won't want to answer for anybody. I don't know how much time you got here, Jared, but maybe, if anybody's got any questions for Jared or for me, more than welcome to answer those, and I'll check in the other room here. But give an opportunity here. Let's see. Oh, you may be able to. There we go. Well, Jared, if you want to throw in a link to, anybody who wants to find you. So maybe, folks that are looking for specialty mechanical contractor, problem solver, we'll drop that in here. We'll drop a link into our hiring platform here in case anybody is curious. More than welcome to check that out there. And it's been a great pleasure, Jared, talking to you and rekindling a relationship after, I don't know, was it like 20 some odd plus years? I was really happy that you reached out to me on LinkedIn last year, and it's been great reconnecting and learning more about your business and your journey, and sharing with our audience. We'll be repurposing this content in snippets and into articles, and it'll be on the YouTube channel, so everybody will be able to find that here. And again, thank you very much for your time today, Jared.
Yeah, thank you, Fletch. It was good talking, and we'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, awesome, guys. Thank you. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Yeah.